The Verstappen-Norris clash from Austria proved that the FIA has a long way to go in preventing these things, but also proved that Verstappen hasn't changed one bit from the 2021 season, as anytime his win or domination is threatened, he resorts to dirty moves that only benefit him. Now, is a more serious punishment needed for the Dutch driver to change his unfair ways, or is the FIA allowing this on purpose? The biggest talking point from Formula One's 2024 Austrian Grand Prix was, of course, Max Verstappen and Lando Norris colliding in the main race's final laps, which decided the contest in George Russell's favour. The result made the Mercedes driver a two-time GP winner and was a fine reward for his effort in a challenging W15 car to put himself in position to capitalise on the collision ahead. Lewis Hamilton, Oscar Piastri and the Ferrari drivers failed in that regard. The mix behind Red Bull and McLaren got another detailed dose with what we witnessed in Austria, but the biggest new element concerned the racecraft limits of the two drivers leading the standings. We can take two major things out of this. One is that the FIA is in big part to blame about this. In an interview with Sky Sports F1 in the immediate aftermath of Sunday's main event in Austria, the McLaren team principal Adrea Stella said, "I see it as the entire population in the world will know who is responsible, except for a group of people, Red Bull, its fans, and Verstappen and his fans. But the problem behind it is that if you don't address these things honestly, they'll come back. They have come back today because they weren't addressed properly in the past when there were some fights with Lewis that needed to be punished in a harsher way. You learn how to race in a certain way, which we can consider fair and square." Stella was referencing the multiple times Verstappen and Hamilton collided in their bitter 2021 world title contest, where they made contact at Imola, Silverstone, Monza and Jeddah. There was also a near collision at the 2021 Brazilian GP, where Verstappen forced Hamilton off the track at turn 4 at Interlagos, a move that went unpunished by the officials, with Hamilton nevertheless going on to get ahead. Previous leniency has encouraged Verstappen to race in a certain manner. It would be unfair to claim that Verstappen races with such arrogance that he believes he's untouchable, as I don't think he consciously races with the mindset of "I can do whatever I want, they won't punish me." However, Verstappen has always raced with a particular approach. He perceives himself not as aggressive but as hard and fair. Given that Verstappen entered F1 at an age when his racecraft and style would typically still be developing in F3 or F2, he's now spent a decade racing in a way that's largely gone unpunished. Thus, he's not been incentivized to change. Every now and again he does pick up a penalty, but in 2021 in particular, to take Stella's example, there were several moves, especially towards the end of the season when under the most pressure, when he was potentially vulnerable as he was towards the end of the Austrian Grand Prix against Norris, where Verstappen crossed a line against Hamilton. The problem is that the way that the races were being managed in 2021 by race control and the stewards put way too much emphasis on protecting the show. It went beyond let them race and veered into preserving the entertainment at all costs. We know this because the following season the rules changed and they've evolved again since then. And each of these evolutions has either made some of Verstappen's moves from 2021 illegal or just reaffirmed that they were at the time. Verstappen's lack of punishment at the time and previously has emboldened him to continue racing in the same way. This approach has often worked in his favour, so why would he change? If a driver is naturally aggressive and uncompromising and they build a long-standing F1 career on that basis, why would they willingly adopt a more conservative, unnatural racing style? The combination of his inherent nature, the nurturing from his karting days, his development in racing and his experiences in F1, especially during the intense 2021 season, has shaped the driver Norris faced on Sunday. This driver tests the limits more than most and is more likely to exceed them. Facing an unpredictable rival often requires unpredictability. To compete with Verstappen, one must either outpace him, a feat rarely achieved consistently since Hamilton's peak performances in 2021, or fight fire with fire. In Austria, Norris chose the latter. This approach increases the risk of an accident, but it's necessary. Stella also pointed out that Verstappen doesn't need to race this way. While he detests losing any battle, perhaps if he lost occasionally, he would have fewer incidents and a better reputation among those who view him negatively. However, it's clear that Verstappen doesn't care about that. You could also argue that Verstappen wouldn't be the driver he is at all if he reigned in that final 1% in battle. Perhaps it's part and parcel of the same mentality that allows him to do everything else that's so good, so effective. but it has a clear downside. It's a weakness in specific circumstances, namely a sustained wheel-to-wheel fight with increasing pressure that leaves Verstappen vulnerable. This creates the conditions for exactly what happened in Austria, and most likely at other races in the future. That's frustrating for his rivals in situations like this, but it's also a problem for Verstappen himself. A problem that, if not dealt with, will put a serious stain on Verstappen's legacy no matter how many titles he wins. Which leads me to the second point. Verstappen proved that he hasn't changed at all since 2021. One of Verstappen's innate characteristics is his utter unyieldingness. The lack of action in 2021 clearly tightened his resolve. Sunday's race showcased another of the markers he claims he doesn't lay down, but evidently does. Consider Japan 2023, where Verstappen denied sending a message after Red Bull's humbling at Singapore. This was undermined by team principal Christian Horner, revealing that Verstappen was properly fired up and said, "I want to win the race by 20 seconds." Verstappen entered the Austria weekend with a 69-point lead over Norris. He had no need to defend as aggressively as he did. However, similar to his hyper-aggressive driving towards Hamilton in early 2021, echoing tactics of controversial F1 greats Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher, he was plainly sending a message to Norris. Norris responded in kind, holding his line against the outside at turn 3 during their collision. Unlike Verstappen's move against Carlos Sainz and Leclerc last year, which involved illegal maneuvers from the inside car, Norris stayed straight. He quickly realized that the only way to fight Verstappen is to match his aggression, a lesson possibly learned from the 2021 season. Norris took immediate action because, unlike his claim to be in a 2024 title fight after his near miss in Barcelona, the points deficit allowed him to take risks that Hamilton couldn't afford in early 2021. This saga also dispels the notion that Verstappen had been driving with great maturity since his 2021 battle, as Horner suggested at the 2022 French GP. This theory, based on his clean scraps with Leclerc that year, was weak. Verstappen likely recognised that the RB18 would be the best 2022 car once it shed its excess weight, and Ferrari would implode against the Red Bull team. He didn't need to be as aggressive, not because he had decided to change. This argument was always flimsy. Brazil 2022 proved this with another needless crash with Hamilton and Verstappen's refusal to help Sergio Perez finish second in the standings, exposing internal Red Bull tensions. In 2023, Verstappen called Russell a dickhead for racing with the same uncompromising style in the Baku sprint. It's rather shameful how quickly Verstappen highlighted his team's failings in the last Austrian GP pit stop and his awkward balance shift on the tricky hard tyres. Plus, he pointed out how this brilliant track layout lends itself to controversial tactics by those willing to exploit it cynically. Unfortunately, this is not new, as it seems the same approach the FIA treated Hamilton during the Mercedes era. There needs to be greater consistency in policing champions, not just appeasing them. Take the personal fan passion out of it, and it's pretty clear that the FIA has still got a long way to go in this sport, and this sport has much to improve. We can just hope it does that sooner rather than later. So, do you think Max should face a more severe punishment for this? Let us know in the comments down below, and we'll see you in the next video.